what's up everybody? It's George again. I just got done with step number 13 if you've been following along. And moving on to step 14 now, which will be building the X-axis idler bearings and printed part and belt tensioner. The parts you will need will be 2 of the 624 ZZ ball bearings, part number 38, 1 X belt holder, this U-shaped bracket, number 66, an M30. Now it does, well, I'll skip that part for right now and move on to the rest. You're going to need an M4 lock nut, part number 14. You're going to need an M4 flat washer, part number 8. You're going to need M3 flat washer, part number 7. So one of each of those flat washers. You're going to need an M3 wing nut, part number 15. And printed part number 2. So this is the X-axis end, and if you want to take a closer look, it's got that little dimple, a pocket for that bearing to slide into, and a place for the linear bearing. So in the instructions it does ask also for part number 35, which is an M3 by 30 screw, and part number 28, part number 28 M3 by 30 screw, and this is actually going to be the wrong part. I'm going to just go over this part real quick. Now, people had complained that they were receiving a screw that was too short. This is what they did. They supplied an M30 by 50 millimeter screw. They only supplied one, and this is the only place you're going to be able to use it. Now, instead of using that screw, we're going to insert this one here into the U-shaped bracket like so, and tighten that down. And then we're also going to want to snug that right up against the end there, using a wrench, Allen wrench. Tighten that down. From here we're going to take part number 35, which is the M4 by 25 screw, and the 264 ZZ ball bearings, number 38. We're going to insert these ball bearings like so in between this Y bracket, feed the M4 by 25 screw, part number 35. We're going to add one number 8 M4 flat washer, part number 8. And we're going to lock it down with the M4 lock nut, part number 14. Now you're going to tighten it down until just before it gets snug. You do want some give to it. FYI, this is one of the 2 bits I've used so far in this set. I have not used any other bits. So there we go, we have loose, and you want to be able to rotate this screw and rotate the bearings freely. Once you have that together, we're going to insert this through this hole there. I'm going to place that together, as you can see how it sits, and this will tension the X-axis belt. On here we're also going to add an M3 flat washer, and an N3 wing nut. The N3 flat washer is part number 7, and we're going to be adding part number, and the M3 wing nut is part number 15. So tighten that down just for now. Leave it with some give. We're going to take one of the LM8UU linear bearings, part number 40. And you're going to insert this bearing like so from either end. You're going to want to, there's a little lip. I don't know if you can see it right here and on the inside, just where that sits. There you go, that's a good view. So now this bearing should sit in between those two slots. So starting from this end, you're kind of just jumping over it for a second. And there you go. It's set nice. And it's in there. Let's see if we can get it. That's just right behind the lip and just behind that lip. Okay. And I believe that's it for step number 11, 12, step number 14. Just double check here. And yes, that is it for step number 14. So let's see if I can squeeze in another step right now. We're going to need 2 of the 370 millimeter smooth rods, which is the second longest smooth rod. We're going to need 2 of the LM8 UU linear bearings, part number 40. We're going to need 2 of the brass nuts, part number 17, and they look like this. And we're going to need 8 M3 by 16 screws, number 26. With that, I'm going to add 8 of the M3 flat washers. Part number 7. And 2 of the screw locking fenders, part number 19, which are the lock collar, smooth rod lock collars. Look like so. They have a set screw on the side. So part number 19. Now, once again, you always want to clean off the linear, the smooth rods before you place your linear bearings onto them. Clean those off. And then take 2 of the LM8UU linear bearings and carefully slide those on. 1 on each rod. I do happen to notice that sometimes the linear bearings insert better on one side than the other. That's probably because someone didn't smooth out that lip as good. But these bearings are sensitive, so be very careful as you insert them. Okay. Hold on a second, please. Okay. We are going to need printed piece number 1 as well. So this, we're going to just place the last fourth LM8 UU linear bearing part number 40. So we did have one left over from step number 13. This should have been part of step 13, but we just got to it now. And again, we're just going to insert that in like so, and we're done with that part. We have the linear bearings on here, and the way it's going to look something like this when it's done. One on each side. These two locking collars will be placed on the smooth rods. On one end. Okay, bit of a fight. We'll take the other collar and place it on the other smooth rod, leaving the set screws loose, of course. And you want to back it off enough so it doesn't actually interfere with the hole. These rods will stop there for that part. We'll move over onto these brass nuts, which will get seated at the bottom. You're going to want the taller end of the brass nut to go into the part like so. And if you have anything that doesn't fit into its hole, they do give you a small key file to help trim things out. And I actually see a part coming up that will have that problem. We're going to take one of the M3 flat washers and one of the M3 by 16 screws, and we're going to secure that brass nut, which already has threaded holes on there. And there's one of 4 holes up here that you can feed it through and into that brass nut. Takes a little bit of doing. You do go in there. This is one heck of a tight spot, so it may be easier for some individuals just to use the Allen key itself. Getting 3 more of these M3 flat washers and M3 by 16 screws ready. Now on this part you're going to want to keep the washer on the end so it doesn't snag on plastic here. As I said before, Allen key can help you out in the tight spots. There we go. thread that on. Now I'm not going to secure these completely all the way. One more time. Offsetting the washer. There is a little lip right here. And as you can see, the nut's already hitting on it, or the screw. Just kind of wiggle that in there and find its way. Start threading it on gently. And it'll pull itself in. Place the last one. And secure that brass nut to the printed part number 2. Again, using a diagonal fashion to tighten the screws, diagonal pattern. Now 3D printed parts are pretty strong. They will always come apart in layers, how it's printed. So this part was sitting like this when it was printed, and I could easily break it this way. This way has got some strength. Now depending on the infill, if you over tighten this, you can actually fracture and crack this, so be careful. Do not over tighten it. Do not over tighten it. As you can see, I came already pretty close. Some of the stress points start turning white around it. You don't want to go much further than that. That's it. Now we're going to take printed part number 1 and repeat the same process using brass nut, placing the longer end of the brass nut into the bottom of the printed part. And there we go. We're having some problems. I'm going to fix. So there we go. No problem. So again, we want to take 4 of the M3 by 16 screws and put on 4 of the M3 flat washers, 1 in each of the screws. Then secure the brass nut to the printed part using the M3 by 16 screws, making sure the washer is on this side to keep the screw from sinking into the actual printed part as you tighten it. Tighten down this part right here. And we got 2 more screws. We're almost done with this part. We shall be attaching the smooth rods in just a moment. Again, do not over tighten these screws. You will literally crush the printed materials if you over tighten it. Now I got all 4 screws in there. I'll tighten this down. Tighten down all the screws again in diagonal fashion, diagonal pattern. there. Down there. Okay, let's zoom out. Okay, we've secured these down. Now, before any of you go and ask, we will be adding this screw afterwards to tighten that down, and we'll leave that till later. For now, we're going to continue with step 14. Sorry, the camera stopped. So inserted these two smooth rods into the printed part number 1, which is the motor bracket. Now we're going to take printed part number 2, slide that on to the other end, smooth rods, and you'll notice that's why you have the locking collar locks right here. So not going to tighten this just yet. So just so these stop moving around though, I am gonna snug them up just a bit. Just offset them. A little bit. And again, that's just so they stop sliding around on me so much. Okay. Now, I should point out one thing. Let me take this off. You will notice that there is a nut that goes there, as well as a threaded screw and washer that goes here. We're holding off on that for the current moment. Just make that even space in there. And that'll pretty much be it for that step. And we'll see you guys later. Y'all have a nice day. Bye now.